a quick summary of the paper. Apologies for those who have read it. The nature of the thing is that you think that if you publish it on the web and then the Straits Times report it, and people who read the Straits Times report will go and read the paper, right? But I find that most people who have read the Straits Times report have not read the full-length report, which is a bit intimidating. I suppose 11 pages and in double space. So I thought that that would be a good chance to revisit the paper. The paper can be summarized as this, the conclusion. As long as the government does not get into the act, the mainstream media, and I'm talking about the Straits Times in particular, seems to be able to fulfill, to a large, though not complete extent, the standard theoretical functions of media, bring the news to the people, provide space for commentary, for reflection, for deliberation. So as long as the government is not in the playing field, on the playing field, the mainstream media, after all, is run like a professional organization. They send scholars overseas to Columbia, to Brown University and whatnot. They come back, school in all the traditional Western ideas of media as fair, balanced, objective, and might even say fourth estate, right? So when given a chance, when the government is sort of has its eye on other things, mainstream media, being also interested in its long-term survival, is capable of fulfilling the traditional functions that we expect of sort of vigorous and robust media, right? But, and that's the second part, when the government gets involved, the game changes and the space shrinks. Space for the journalists, space for debate, space for discussion. In the Aware Saga, there are many plays within the play of the Aware Saga. But if we judge from just the news coverage alone, then the Aware Saga, from the point of view of how the mainstream media and the government interacted, can be divided into two acts, right? And we should look at the coverage of the Aware Saga from that point of view. Act 1, when the government was a bystander, right? Before the issue of, well, the religious groups getting into the secular space, before the, in fact, as problematic issue of the comprehensive sexuality education program became a matter of controversy, the government was a bystander. But once the issue of religion and secularism came in, and once the issue of was the common sexuality education doing the right thing became an issue, then the government steps in, and then the coverage, the nature of the coverage changes, right? And you can say that when that happened, the Straits Times went back to being the Straits Times. Okay. So as for Act 1, we can say that the ST did a credible job of bringing the news, right? That's my conclusion at least. It did, however, in that Act 1, it did less well as far as commentary and discussion is concerned. Okay, I'll elaborate a bit on that. In Act 2, when, after the government has stepped in, it didn't do well in either, right? Because, well, there are several reasons for this. I don't know whether it is the direct result of government intervention. After all, acting minister for MICA, Mr. Yu, himself said that he actually made a phone call to the editors, right? Concerned about their coverage of the Aware. So we don't know what was said there, whether it was congratulatory or otherwise. Or the second reason could be because the judgment of the editors concerning the changed situation that resulted from the government's intervention, right? So they are trained professional people. They know well where the lines can be drawn roughly, and then maybe they make the judgment there. And the third reason is because it's plain oversight, that they didn't think of doing the things that I thought that they should have done. And leave they had really fulfilled their function as a robust newspaper. So what are these shortcomings? Right? I find that the main shortcomings are in omission. A lot of people focus on what the Straits Times did, right? But I think the greater failure is in what the Straits Times, or in fact today, or newspaper and Sao Paulo did not do, right, as an institution. So what did they not do? Okay, I think there are several very important public interest issues which arose out of the AWARE issue, which were not adequately raised by the media at all, right? And I would say that in this case, the media includes also the alternative media, right? And it includes, other actors in the public sphere. I'll go on to that. But if you just look at the mainstream media, the Straits Times, right? The questions which were very important, which were not raised at all, or which were only raised peripherally, were number one, the way in which interests and civil society groups ought to engage one another. Right? Should there be certain ground rules? Whether the anti-gay, for example, lobby ought to have found an alternative to AWARE instead of infiltrating it. Right? Is infiltration a sort of okay kind of thing for an interest group to do? I don't think that question was adequately raised. Because there's implications for democracy and for civil society and so forth. Second question, the meaning of the word democratic as applied to the AWARE elections and to civil society organizations in general. For instance, was the fact that the new AWARE executive committee members were the fact that they were elected in an open election sufficient for it to be called democratic, even though their real intentions for holding power were not revealed. Okay. In fact, you say that the PAP used to make the charge about the communists, right? That it was a false front, isn't it? You pretend to be democratic and you pretend to be our buddies and so forth, right? You pretend to do X, but actually your motive, your real objective is Y, right? So you stand for elections, right? Then you capture power, and then Y comes in, right? So should that be considered democratic? And can their actions also be considered, democratic when actually it is anti-democratic in nature? They want to shut up the old AWARE, right? So these questions were not raised at all. I think that it was people talk about it, but as a newspaper, it was not given enough coverage. And I think that discussion is important because it will set the path ahead for future, future actions and interactions involving different groups in society with regard to civil society. Okay? And the third question is the role of religion in society and the meaning of secularism, right? In the context of Singapore, what's the nature of Singapore's secularism? What form should Singapore's secularism take? Does the changing religious landscape, the rise of the religious right, for example, warrant new thinking about the limits of secularism and religion's participation in civic life? Right? And I'll say that the only player in the end was what? Government, right? It came in, makes pronouncement, end of discussion, chapter closed. Let's move on, right? So those three omissions. But I think that the greater omission, and I say this as a father of two children who are already grown up and unfortunately have gone through the common sexuality education program where they are told that condoms are not safe. But, okay, common sexuality education, comprehensive, sexuality education program. I think the whole host of questions which ought to be asked by society, by all of us, by parents, right? Not just by government, okay? And ask, one had hope through the newspapers, right? Okay. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Well, signal to me when I can't, when you can't hear. You don't want me to repeat the same stuff, right? Okay. Okay. What exactly is the common sexuality education program?